What's up, everyone? It's your boy Shaheen. I'm out here. Thanks for joining our next episode of Shahs and Kings. We actually have a guest on the show today. Her name is Jasminea. She is an Iranian-American singer, songwriter. And today we actually wanted to talk about masculinity and femininity and how it's affecting our modern society and some of the political systems around that. So I guess I kind of wanted to ask Jasminea, like first right off the bat, who is a self-proclaimed feminist, right?
Yes.
And I think,
Hi, how are you?
And I think we all are to a certain degree. How would you define feminism? Like what's your definition of that?
My definition?
Yeah.
Okay. Simple, that the social structures that inhibit women from achieving their fullest potential, and men, should be challenged and restructured so that no matter what your gender is, you can be your fullest self. And right now, because of a lot of, gendered norms, the patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny overall, a lot of women and non-conforming people are faced with lots of challenges and difficulties that they otherwise wouldn't have been if the systems that we were in did not look at gender as means of worth. Okay. Yeah, so like dismantling that and having a more equal society, regardless of gender.
So, I mean, I think basically what you said was, in a way, like equality that allows both sexes to just become whoever and whatever they want. And have no like legal or like no institutional barriers that prevent that from happening, right? Like that's the goal.
More than institutional, I would say, right. But yeah, basically just that. Yeah.
Okay. And I think like, well, if you look at it from like an institutional standpoint, I think like everyone in this podcast right now would agree. And would be like even like the worst kinds of people, like even like Donald Trump, right? Like right, like I'm not saying he's a feminist, but even like someone like him would say like,
Bro,
oh yeah,
like
I'm
feminist, man.
Yeah,
super feminist.
Like like he could make the argument like, look, I'm not a sexist. Like I actually just put this female on the Supreme Court, right?
Right, exactly.
And if you're using like that definition, sure, like maybe like everyone's a feminist, but there's obviously way more to it. There's so many layers to it, because like, yeah, even though like she's a woman, like she's probably going to enforce a lot of anti-women laws, right? Like,
exactly. You can't just add women and stir. That's a positioning I also hold. You can't just add women and stir. That don't do it.
So I guess like what are in your opinion, right? What are some things today? Okay, let's say from like an institutional standpoint, and then later on we can definitely dive into like the more cultural setbacks and like gender role and those kind of expectations. But what are some institutional barriers that, in your opinion, that hold women back from achieving equality?
Okay, well, like the first and like the most common thing that I'm sure everyone has heard is the pay gap, and how men oftentimes are paid much more than women, are oftentimes considered for positions over women. And these are often based, because the thing about the institution and cultural is that they're really, really connected. Mm-hmm. So you can't necessarily like separate them, because they all kind of work to create this idea of what women are and what they are not, and what they can do and what they can't do. So institutionally, that translates to women are not seen often as being good leaders. They're not seen as being strong and forceful if necessary. They're not necessarily seen as scientific and in tune with engineering. And so that's why there's like this push to get more women into STEM fields and more of traditionally masculine roles, right? So all of these things kind of add up to creating well, I think all of these things add up to creating an idea of what women think they can do and what they think they cannot do, on top of what everybody else in society thinks they can and cannot do. And so what that translates to is that a lot of women might end up genuinely being happy doing things that are traditionally feminine. But my question is that if they had never been in a society that didn't make them feel like they couldn't, let's say, be a super successful scientist, or be a mechanical engineer, like, or be a mechanic, literally, like, think of a mechanic, I don't think of women. And when we do, it's usually hypersexualized, like, oh, look at them fixing the car, you know? So all of these things kind of add into these stigmas and these expectations of what jobs and what roles women can do and what they can't do. And these get like internalized, and all of these then get echoed in society, and they keep coming down, and so it trickles down so simply. And so, like, literally Trump wanting to put a woman in the Supreme Court. I mean, let's talk about the Iranian courts. There are many women in the Iranian courts, but literally when you hear what they say, they're saying, like, they're literally breeding and continuing misogyny, because misogyny isn't just inherently for men to promote. You know, it's not a masculine thing necessarily to be misogynistic. Misogyny is about thinking less of women, and men can think less of women, and women themselves can think less of themselves as well. And they think that it is not my place to be, let's say, the president. It is not my place to question my husband. Let's think about Iranian terms. So then these women that are very much part of the judiciary system in Iran, or like in the parliament, they're literally like regurgitating the same narrative that the regime wants them to say about what femininity means in Iran. And then, so just, that's an extreme example, but that's also happening here. So
I see what I agree with you, and I think to an extent, and I think what you said about like the institutional thing and the cultural, like, I do think that they're blended together, because I mean, there is no law specifically that says, like, okay, like, women have to be paid 3/4 as much as like a man is, right? Like, that's not written in law. Exactly. But it just might happen that, like, if I'm a CEO, like, not me, but like if there's like a CEO of I don't know, like a hiring manager, and he's interviewing a woman and decides to hire her, and he just might unconsciously think that she's worth less than a male worker. So that's why I always wonder, like, well, how much can you really expect the government to step in? If, to me, this seems like more, because I mean, you can pass as many laws as you want. I mean, like, same goes with race, right? Like, there is no like law. Like, the reason why like black people are like disproportionately like in prison, I mean, there is no law that writes down like go after black people and throw them in prison, but there are sort of like the,
but it's happening.
Like it's happening. It's happening. It's more because of like these they're like, okay, like, let's go after them by like doing the war on drugs, right?
Exactly.
Like, so things like that. So I guess the only thing I guess it is cultural. Some people would argue that, and you know, Keith and French, you guys can jump in any time, but like, some argue that men, the reason why they get paid more for the like the pay gap is because they're saying that men are more likely to maybe ask for that raise, or they might be more shown to like be more career ambitious, and they have a bigger desire to climb up that corporate ladder. Right. So that could be another explanation for the pay gap. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is another argument.
That is a very, very correct argument. It's statistically shown men who are underqualified for positions tend to apply anyway, and women who are actually overqualified tend to think of themselves as less qualified and then not apply for those positions. I do think, though, that this is directly related to exactly the capabilities and worth that we see in ourselves. So it's not that it's a bad thing that men are confident in their abilities to go on and like ask for that raise. The issue comes when women are not. because they've been so conditioned to be so cautious about everything they do, and they're so critiqued in everything they do, that going and asking for that position feels and is for them and their experiences and the reactions that they've gotten like throughout their whole life much harder to do than for a guy, and much harder to then get that raise as well, because it's like, why are you asking for this? Why are you being so bossy? You know, so yeah.
Do you have the Keith or Ferners, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah. No, I was going to ask the same thing about that Shaheen did, basically about like, you know, men not necessarily being more qualified, but feeling more confident in their qualifications.
Yeah.
And basically using that to position themselves higher, basically. And like, what are some ways that you think women can be empowered in the workplace through education, different things, to feel more confident in their own abilities and seek those promotions more?
Wow, that's a good question. Wow, that's a really good question. It all relates to your confidence and like where that confidence is coming from. And we're all living in this world that creates these insecurities in us, especially in women and in men. Different aspects of men's self-worth get triggered and get targeted to be utilized as insecurities to then like profit off of in capitalism, but the same for women. And so if we're going to function within these standards that we're in, at least just knowing our own worth as an individual, not as a woman, not as a man, as a person who has gone through X and Y and who deserves to get this promotion. And the issue is oftentimes women that do go ahead, and not all women, obviously, but like a large percentage of women that go ahead and do ask for these things they get treated with negative reactions. So then that creates so much, like you build up your confidence, you want to go for it. And then you're like, why are you asking this? No, I'm going to give it to like this person. Why are you asking this? And so that as much confidence as you can like build in yourself every time that you go ahead and you think that you're worthy of something and you think that you earned it, and they tell you no, and you can't really put why have I not done enough like reading on this topic? Am I not like well educated in this particular field? When a lot of times there's like unconscious biases that are limiting a lot of women from getting higher up in what they want to get to. And to that, it's like you just have to keep going and working to change these narratives. So be confident in yourself and be educated as to why it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're not getting that position. It's not that you're not qualified for it.
Right.
It's because certain expectations most likely are limiting the hiring manager's view of your capabilities. Go work on that so that you can create a culture change. And it's like, it's so, can I curse here? Can I curse?
Oh yeah, go for it.
It's so fucked. It's so fucked because, you know, I think a lot of people of color also relate with the sentiment of like being the educators, and like, maybe I don't want to be an educator. Maybe I don't want to tell everyone like 2 + 2 = 4. And like, this is my experience. Why do you have these like perceptions of me just because of my race or gender? It's exhausting. Not everyone has to do it. It's not our responsibility to do it, but someone's got to do it. Someone has to start questioning why the hiring manager doesn't want to hire you. If everything else, like a lot of times, like, sorry, I like talk a lot. I do apologize. But like, this is so like unconscious bias is so prevalent. It's not just like with gender. I was in one of my courses with psychology and politics, and it literally showcased the same resume. They did like a study. It was the same resume. Everything was the same. And he was like obviously a Democratic candidate, let's say, and a Republican candidate. And when they applied when the Democrat applied to the Republican job, didn't get taken. Obviously, when the Republican did, they did, and vice versa. And then the same thing was done with names. So an ethnic name and a non-ethnic name. And the people that got hired were the ones with the least ethnic name. And resume is literally the exact same resume. So it showcases how prevalent, not just with like gender and race, is the unconscious biases that govern our choices, and we don't even know it does. Sorry, that was like really all over the place, but like, yeah, question the structures.
No,
You
that
know,
was great.
Don't give
yeah,
up.
no, I see like there's like stigmas, right?
Yeah.
Because we associate like, all right, like if you take a look at like masculinity versus femininity, like I'm not necessarily talking about male versus female, but you know,
Yeah.
like we sort of look at I mean I personally look at them as more personality traits than gender traits, but it just
Yeah.
seems that like, you know, more men tend to have more masculine traits and more women tend to adopt more feminine traits. And you know, I do like, I guess like when it comes to being ambitious, right?
Yeah.
That tends to be associated with masculinity.
It does.
And when I think it's just seen that like let's take for example Hillary Clinton, right? Like I was a Bernie guy, so this is not me like fully like
Same.
yeah, like, this is
Bernie all
not
the
me
way.
fully like defending like Hillary Clinton per se, but like
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of people just I feel like they just didn't like her because she was like this. She came off as she came off as like hyper ambitious.
Yeah.
And even though, but the same, but if you really look at it, like most male politicians also do, like they also come off as like hyper ambitious. But I just think like when we see a man who's ambitious and he's like going for it, like for many men or even like women, like they see that and they're like inspired by it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, that's a man being a man. Like,
Look at him go. Yay, you.
but if it's like a woman doing it, like there is backlash, not just with Hillary
Exactly.
Clinton. I mean, a lot of the shit that Hillary Clinton, a lot of the shit Hillary got was justified in my view, but a lot of it just wasn't.
Yeah. It like literally her like opponent was Trump. Her opponent was Trump. She fucked up. He fucked up. They both fucked up. They both had like things that they did wrong, except one person was held to a level of like political correctness, scrutiny, and like so much critique for like mismanaging one thing ever so incorrectly, while the other one literally got away with making fun of disabled people, being blatantly racist and sexist.
Right.
It's fine.
Overtly.
It's overt,
Yeah.
you know, so that the election, literally in a nutshell, because they're both flawed contestants, they're humans. Hillary is not perfect, and even though I'm self-proclaimed raging, I like to use raging so like I can like be like, let me tell you what raging feminists are. Don't be afraid of them. Like we're not that crazy. But even the raging feminists, I wanted to vote for Bernie, not for Hillary, because I agreed with his politics. I agree with what he was standing up for. But Hillary got through the nomination, and so did Trump. And I mean, like the way they were both treated. The headlines, the criticism, and what happened. Hillary was qualified. So if Hillary was a man, would we be here right now?
I don't know. I mean, hopefully. Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, like in any situation where Trump is not president, I say hopefully. That's what I meant by that.
Inshallah.
Yeah. And hopefully, no. But I'm seeing that, like for example, like if you look at like Joe Biden today versus like Hillary, like September 27th today versus September 27th of 2016, Joe Biden is doing so much better polling wise and number wise than Hillary Clinton was. And you know, like Joe Biden, don't get me wrong, I like the guy. I'm definitely gonna vote for him.
I won't get you wrong. Yeah. I won't get you wrong. Talk shit about him is fine. Go ahead.
I actually really do like Joe Biden, but in many ways, like I felt like Hillary did come off as more alert and like ready to do the job. Like when I look
she was prepared.
Yeah.
She was trying this literally like what, sorry, that accent was weird. Literally what we were talking about was the fact that let's say someone wants to go and get that promotion, right? Hillary was ready. She was prepared. Is she a boomer? I think she is a boomer. She was trying so hard to get with the youths, you know, but she was trying, and sure it was cringy, but she was trying, and she was
like
educated.
I'm gonna go Pokemon Go to the polls. Remember that?
Yeah. You know, like I look back and I'm like, oh, it was simpler times. We made fun of her for that, but like she was really trying. She was on top of her game. She was well overqualified. She had been in office, and you know what? Another sexist thing that was thrown at her was her comparison and equalization to her husband. She is not her husband. Yet women are oftentimes put as
as an extension of the
doppelgangers
husband. Yeah.
as the extension, because this is
Yeah.
what I mean about like historically, and this is why like a lot of people might argue laws have been set that there's no more sexism now because like we live in a free society. Okay, yeah. Laws are there to try to combat these things. Good, let them be there. However, when you have thousands of years of a particular comforting idea of gender norms, of the women being of the man. I mean, I'm learning French right now, and literally in French, you want to say like his wife, it's literally like la femme de Marc, which means like the woman of Mark.
Huh.
Mark's woman. I mean, but like that make it all resonates in like a, yeah, it kind of makes sense because that's literally what we were. We were our fathers, and then we were given away to our husbands, so we were like very much property. And yeah, that's not the case anymore here, but that doesn't mean that the association of
But it's still
women
ingrained
being,
in the language and therefore the culture.
exactly,
Yeah,
it is
yeah, no,
still
I hear
very
you.
much ingrained. So why is Hillary being compared to her husband?
The only thing I had to say with that is like, I mean, and maybe that is definitely a problem, but I think like, you know, at the end of the day, her last name is Clinton.
Yeah,
And I think like, you know, husband and wife, they tend like people believe that husband and wife tend to just have like a similar philosophy, and
yeah,
so maybe they just think that like because they're husband and wife, people had this idea that they sit and talk to each other every day and they have like the same goals in mind. So that's why she was being compared to Bill. Now maybe so I don't know, like I feel like they're both kind of true, you know, like what you said. It's like, oh, she's being compared to her husband because like she's seen as like people view her as like a below Bill kind of thing.
yeah. Or just part of an extension of him, I guess. And yes, of course, when you are married to someone, when you are, you know, in a family with someone, you tend to have similar views, but sometimes not. But like, I'm pretty sure they had similar views, and like, I mean, I don't know their life, but yes, they were both part of the establishment. Yes, I mean, you know, yes, but so is Biden. The only person that that wasn't part of the establishment as much was Sanders.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. He gets so much shit. I'm like, just listen to the man.
His opinions, his opinions definitely were more anti-establishment.
Yeah.
At least for American society. I feel like if you were to take Bernie Sanders and like if you were to throw him in Canada, his views and opinions are actually pretty mainstream.
But literally, everyone's out here talking about Sanders like he's some type of like radical leftist, when in reality he's like center left.
I think some of his supporters, like, yeah, I think, you know, like, well, actually, you know,
supporters could be like super leftist. Sure,
some of his supporters, and they're a little. As a Bernie Sanders supporter, I will say that some of his supporters are a little annoying, but that doesn't include me or you. But Fanush, you've been quiet, man. You have anything to say?
I've been quiet because I've been very attentive and observant of everything that's been going on here. I've been trying to formulate exactly what it is that I'd like to ask, and I think I have my idea. I would just like to say that from an individualist standpoint, as men and women, I can see where we can both, in both sexes, take steps in improving ourselves in our recognition of the place in women in society and in an elevated and equal standpoint, and what we can do to educate ourselves and make ourselves better in recognition of that. I guess where my question lies is, once we're both on the same page in terms of where that is and an understanding of where that is, how do we bring about the reforms in the professional and in the professional structure, like in the workplace or within politics or so forth? Once a great deal of us recognize that, what steps can we start taking to I guess initiate these changes so that they're actually implemented, such as equal pay between the sexes, or even when women do have the I guess the acknowledgement that they of their self-worth and where that is, how they can still advance by having these changes implemented so that once they do have the confidence, say, to go apply for those positions that they're seeking, that's available to them. How do we invoke that change?
How do we evoke this change?
Yeah, how do we make it?
Yeah.
How do we go the process of changing the
How
at
is it
least the
done?
professionals? How is it done?
How is it done? Obviously, like, I am no expert.
Yeah, just your
So
opinion.
just my opinion. The thing about that is that gender issue is not just a women's issue. It's not just my issue. It is your issue as much as it is my issue. Because in my opinion, it's not just about, okay, X and Y company is not allowed to discriminate against gender by having any type of like wage differentiation. Because you do that, right? It needs to be a culture change. So in my simple answer, it needs to be a grassroots, fundamentally every home should recognize these qualities as being equalized, or rather not seen in like different elevations. And because when that's not happening, when you just have laws, let's say your company is not allowed to pay its employees of like, let's say this position, any different number. Like it has to be a set number. And if it goes up for everyone, whatever, right? You could do that, but then you can, if the culture hasn't, and you should do that still, but if the culture hasn't agreed to that, if it feels really alienated by that, it will take that as a threat. And that's why you have a lot of people that come out and say, actually, I think white men are the ones that are being oppressed right now because we're putting all of these advances and career moves for women and people of color, and like, they feel victimized.
See affirmative action as a threat somehow.
They see affirmative action as a threat. Now, little disclaimer, when you are privileged, equality feels like discrimination. Equality doesn't feel great for you when you have experienced privilege your whole life. However, so in order to not have that backlash, grassroots changes need to happen at home. So my personal opinion is that literally the differentiation of leaders as masculine and emotional as feminine. When we think about leadership, we think of a guy, and when we think of like emotional and nurturing, we automatically think of a girl or woman. That is gender roles. Gender roles, the way they have been constructed, are demeaning to femininity. So whatever you find, that's why men are told, oh, that's gay, because society associates gayness with femininity, and then femininity as bad. So I'm going to make fun of this guy because he's showcasing characteristics that are feminine and terrible, and therefore terrible. So, oh man, you throw like a girl, because throwing like a girl is bad. And so when we have these different characteristics, it's fine if men are this and women are this, or more men tend to be X and more women tend to be Y. The issue comes in when these different associations are weighted, when these different associations have like power leverages. When we think of smart and athletic as masculine qualities, and when we think of like dainty and quiet and resourceful as feminine qualities. Now, these get oftentimes, even the divine feminine and the divine masculine, while they come across as empowering, and I think they can be for a lot of people, I am not saying that women do not identify with femininity and men do not identify with masculinity. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are aspects of femininity and masculinity that have been constructed to create power differentiations that work to belittle feminine. So that's why you have someone like Margaret Thatcher in the UK. Yeah. She's a woman. She was one of the most ruthless leaders. Like, she didn't give a shit. She was like, like the working class hates her, still hates her in the UK. And all of her characteristics were not at all what you describe as feminine. And
Right.
so my issue, and I think the way we can move forward, is that we take away the weight and the power of what is feminine and what is masculine. So that, because traditionally masculine is seen as better. So a lot of like the first wave of feminism, or some feminists think that if I want to get ahead and to be a man, what does that mean? Because if you say, I'm going to start wearing pantsuits and I'm going to start acting very masculine, and that's what a lot of women in politics and women in CEO positions do, for them to get that job, they start literally behaving masculine. They start behaving and embodying these masculine characteristics because they feel that they cannot get to that position unless they become hyper masculinized, actually. And that's the funny thing. So you look at Thatcher, not only was she like not stereotypically feminine, but she wasn't even like stereotypically masculine. She was like hyper masculinized. I would say toxically masculine. She was, because she was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna be brutal. I'm gonna be a go-getter. I'm gonna be ambitious, and I don't care.
So Margaret Thatcher embodied toxic masculinity.
Oof, quote me on that. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I want to say, like,
Yeah.
I agree. No, I agree with a lot of what you say, and I think like with the only thing I want to say, like, I think like both sides of the argument, whether you're liberal or conservative, whether you have liberal views on feminism or conservative views on feminism, I think both of these sides actually tend to view femininity as a negative thing. Both do, actually, you know, like,
Yes.
I mean, like, conservatives will encourage women to be feminine, but they don't, but I feel like they don't respect it in a way. Like if a human being with a penis were to have some emotional traits,
Yep.
like, oh, you're feminine, you're
You
actually
sissy.
a woman,
Yeah.
and you feel excluded from your fellow man, and it hurts your self-esteem kind of growing up. But whereas in like the other side of the coin, I feel like with the feminist movement, and as much as I support it, like, I think like some well-meaning, although a lot of it's like well-meaning, like they're encouraging women, like, you can't let, like, you know, you have to be 100% like independent woman. You have to, like, you know, we don't need no man, and like you don't. And I mean, like, granted, I'm not saying you need a man, or, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not saying you shouldn't go try to be financially independent, but I feel like they're forcing, like, you have to be career ambitious. You have to, like, you know, go to the top. And I mean, and by the way, if that's what you as a woman, as an individual human being wants to do, cool, I don't care. Like, but I think, you know, there's a, you know, like, with femininity, you know, sometimes I feel like it's just being discouraged from both sides. And that's the issue. That confuses, and I feel like it has a trickle down effect, because like that confuses women, one, because like they
internalize their characteristics as negative and bad. I am bad.
They don't know, like they have an identity crisis.
Yeah.
And then men are confused.
It reinstitutes the idea that masculinity is superior. It reinstitutes this idea that masculinity is superior. And that's the issue. Yeah. Masculinity is not superior. It is just a particular characteristic. It's a trait. It's personal. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, just one thing. Like, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, like, this guy I used to look up to, Elliot Hulse, before he became before he basically became like a far right-wing Western fundamentalist, was he used to say something,
by the way.
Out of nowhere.
Like, it made no sense.
Yeah, but he used to say something very beautiful, which was, men and women are equally beautiful. Like, they're what did he say? Keith, you might know it. It was like, he's like, they're beautifully different but equally beautiful. Yes. Right?
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And like I fucked with it, and like I think a problem with like what he's doing now is like basically like saying, yeah, it's masculinity 100% of the way. I like to chop, you know, 10 trees every day, and you know, and he's doing this while
that was masculinity, by the way. Who's like,
I'm gonna go chop this while holding like while holding like an AR-15 in his hands, like well, yeah, I like to go like, you know, like
I find that
like,
demeaning for masculinity. I'm like, why are
think-
you making men sound out to be like they're animals that can't control their urges and or anger? Like, why is so much of like hyper, like this idea that like I'm gonna be a man's man, so that means I'm gonna be aggressive, uncalculated, and I'm gonna go hunting. I'm gonna go kill things. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Why are we?
Granted,
I think
Why?
that
Why?
comes from like the like if we go back to ancient man and women, obviously, like generally speaking, when men do not have a purpose, and I can say this from personal experience, right? If you don't have a purpose, things you're working towards, and the only thing you're with is yourself.
Yeah.
Only things that you're thinking about as a man, and part of this is from testosterone, not to stereotype, but literally we just think about sex and fighting all the time. That's like the base component of a male brain. And I'm not trying to be sexist when I say that. I'm just saying that's like, those are the two like base points. If there's nothing else going on in your life, that's in your head.
That's really interesting. I mean, I believe your personal experience. Also, I feel as a woman, when I don't have any ambitions and or goals, that shit's terrible. So
Oh yeah, no, it's not fun, but
yeah, no, like I think purpose. So purpose is so fucking important for like a human. And I also think that the issues that come up now is because there's a gender norm. Man goes out, hunts, brings back food. Woman takes care of children. Ecosystem worked. Okay,
right.
That worked out for that time. And or also within that time, women were still seemed as lower.
Considered subservient, right?
Exactly. So that, but you know, it was a thing. That whole structure started changing. So the reason why men are paid more was traditionally they were like, well, they need to be paid more so they can support the family because she's not earning anything. She's earning like, you know, side money, right? So that gets continued. We're living in a world that right now that is finding a different norm. We're in a transitional phase, and that's quite awkward
for many people.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like puberty for the genders. You know, it's where do I fit now? Where and so I think the one thing that my particular opinion, and a lot of people disagree with me, my parents certainly do, is that I think that while people experience femininity and masculinity, this is my opinion, while they experience it and it's true for them, I experience femininity as a woman. I like girly things. I also enjoy masculine things. Cool. However, I truly believe that the reason why I like these things are because I was brought up as a girl, not because I was born a girl, if that makes sense. I was brought up in a society as a identifying woman, and so therefore I experienced and internalized and so my subconscious is feminine, and I think a lot of that has to do with nurture versus nature. So I do think there's obviously hormonal differences and there is differences between men and women. Personally, I don't. My mom can argue with me all day. My mom, so this not all women are on this, you know, but we do experience femininity. It is real. People that feel feminine genuinely feel feminine, and we shouldn't negate femininity as bad and masculinity as bad. We should not look at one as superior to the other. However, we should also remind ourselves that we are probably behaving the way that we are because we were socially structured to do so, which is like a bold statement, but I was in Iran growing up, and this is really simple, like I spoke to you about it, but I loved video games, like boxing video games and racing video games. I told my dad to get me a electric controlled like toy car. Loved them. Loved cars, was like my thing. Also played with my Barbie. Loved that too. And I would go and I would just, my play was gendered. It's really funny in Iran. You're actually, as a kid, you're not really gendered until you hit puberty, and then you're like, fucked. You are a woman. Did you not know? You cannot do these things now.
You know, it's actually funny. This is like slightly off topic, but the baby dolls in Iran actually have like the body parts. Like
they do.
Yeah. Like, 'cause, you know, like I remember, like, like a bit, if you like a
They're
naked toy
anatomically correct.
Really?
yeah,
I don't
like,
remember personally.
like a naked toy baby, or even like a male Barbie doll in Iran will actually have like a little tiny penis on it.
Really?
Nah.
Yeah,
Really?
it's actually
I've
kind
never-
of hilarious. Yeah.
Oh shit.
But no, I don't know why. I just kind of had to bring that up because you were
That's
talking
pretty
about
funny.
dolls in Iran and stuff.
Yeah.
So
No, but so I mean, obviously we spoke. You heard this like theorizing that this example that I bring up, but in the U.S., right? So in Iran, like you don't really have Walmart. You don't have like this massive. It's much more of like small businesses. So small businesses are small, and they don't have like an aisle for a boy and an aisle for a girl. They just have. You don't just go in and you're like, where are the girl toys at? Where are the boy? You just kind of go in. But in the US, and like when I was like learning about these things, and I was in this course about gender and how we get brought up to internalize these differentiations, like there was a photo of like Walmart or whatever, like Toys R Us, some type of like big corporate store. And so then there was literally like a pink aisle and a blue aisle. Cool. Let's gender colors, because why not? Let's gender them. And then in the men's aisle or the boys aisle, there was engineering, there was building, there was Legos, there was toys that were fighting toys and or cars, and let's build a transformer cars that literally like works with your brain to how do I make this car a person car, and then how do I like make it back into a car, and how do I make it a robot again? So it's very much cognitive. You're utilizing your brain, you are thinking, you're problem solving. And then you go to the girl section and it's literally just like dolls and Barbie and let's cook together, let's clean together, literally like a toy vacuum and then a toy kitchen. I'm not gonna lie, I loved playing kitchen. It was perfectly fun. You know why? Because in Iran, I didn't experience these different interests as bad and good or feminine and masculine. I liked cooking, so I played house. And then I liked playing with my cars, so I played with my cars. And so therefore, I was actually able to exercise all qualities I wanted to explore. However, in the US, you're very much limited. And then you get made fun of in school. Oh, that's a boy's toy. Why are you playing with that? And
in Iran, you get made fun of, or
no. Here in Iran, I was playing with my downstairs neighbor video games until like hours. Like bless his heart, we had so much fun because you weren't gendered as a kid, which is really interesting. I mean, I wasn't. I don't know about other families and whatever they want to raise their kids up as.
Like, I mean, I don't know because like, I mean, definitely.
I mean, I was, but less so.
In a way, I mean, like,
yeah.
I'm sure your parents wouldn't dress you up in like a little suit when you were a kid, right? Like
but no kid wear a suit. Yeah, I still wear like skirts I mean, like and whatnot. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah, or.
Yeah, but like funny thing, my hair was short. It was always short. I think the stigma, like your hair needs to be long or whatever. No, I think, but basically, I'm using that explanation to say that like in different cultures, I got to experience my childhood differently, and I can see how kids here are literally gendered so aggressively. Not that you're not in Iran, you are, but like this particular example of like, then girls literally grow up thinking that they can be great chefs, they can be great caretakers, they can be great fashionistas, they can be great, beautiful models, and boys, unless you decide to venture out and go to the boys alley, right? And then boys are like, I can be an engineer, I can be a builder, I can be a NASA scientist, I can go to space. And so from that early on, you're getting conditioned to like things. Like I'm questioning free will a little bit here of like how much of the things that you like and the things that you identify with are things that you really chose to like and not things that were conditioned for you to think that you like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so like part of that, I think personally is like the economy, right, needs certain people to do certain jobs. Mm-hmm. So the way they structure, whether it's our education or the toys we play with, is these assumptions exist for masculinity and femininity.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we're going to encourage those people to pursue those things so that they can fill those roles later on.
And buy our products. Right? Yep, exactly. Yep.
So
Yes.
how I wonder how we would get out of that. Like, do you just get rid of the colors in the aisles?
No, I mean capitalism is. Ooh. Yeah, this capitalism is inherently combined and interlinked with racism and sexism and classism. If you can pay certain people less because of a certain thing, you can differentiate from them. They're women, I'm going to pay them less. Their skin color is slightly off, I'm going to pay them less. It's literally exploitative. So if you can find avenues of which to exploit the means of production, you're going to. So capitalism breeds this. Why are the toys continuing to be colored? Because it sells, because the culture is that. Oh yeah, I'm going to build a pink car for a girl, haha, because that's what girls like. And that's when art imitates society, like life imitates art imitates life, and it continues. So until we change what we genuinely believe, I mean, as long as we live in capitalism, that a lot can't be done, personally, I think.
But don't you think in regards to capitalism, because capitalism as an economic policy is relatively new, right? Like, so, I mean, and these roles
modern capitalism.
Well, right. And I'm saying like these gender roles that we talk about, like they've been around for thousands of years. So what during those thousands of years, like what kept it alive then if we weren't using like this modern form of capitalism? Because I mean, I don't know, because is the issue with feminism like, or not the issue with feminism, but is the struggle is it so directly linked? Like, I mean, if we were to just like take capitalism out of the picture and say replace it with a Bernie Sanders like democratic socialism kind of thing, like
it's not going to go away.
It's still,
it's not like it's going to be like boom boom gone. But I was just I was trying to highlight how with capitalism thrives off of these inequalities.
Oh,
so
sure.
We can differentiate the inequality. Let's say if someone has, I don't know, moles, they have lots of beauty marks, okay? And like, let's say that's something that like makes them, they get marginalized for having lots of beauty marks. I'm literally just spitballing here, right? In capitalism, that's great. I'm going to exploit that. I'm going to hire that person that can't get a job otherwise. I'm going to pay them 10 times less because they need it, because otherwise they're not going to get any job, right? Capitalism breeds and incorporates inequality so that it could fulfill its production at the lowest price possible.
I would definitely agree. And I would say that it definitely, it just takes advantage of it. Like like for example, like I hear a lot of Black artists talking about, like in the music industry, like a lot of like rich white, it's like record label owners and stuff like that. They don't look for like smart, conscious rappers, right? They deliberately look for someone who represents like the most negative stereotype of Black people, right? And Nas had like an album about this, and like I think he had like a song about, he talks about like the minstrel shows and stuff, and like he basically saying like it's like all this music, it's basically just like a capitalistic system where like the rich record label owner just wants to like portray Black people as negatively as they can, not even because like he's like racist to his core, but because he knows he sells and it makes like money.
Why does it sell? Because the society that we live in is racist and sexist and classist. It sells because it feeds and reinforces things that we are familiar with. And why do conservatives have these ideas? Because they want to conserve things. And conserving what we have is conserving racism and sexism and classism, is conserving the power hierarchies that already exist. It is conserving the structures that have kept them where they are, happy, lovely, thriving, at the expense of people of color, at the expense of women, at the expense of communities that they have marginalized. So they want to conserve it. And progressives are like, I mean, I'm using the term progressive not in conjunction to the US progressive, I meant like as the word. You want to progress, you want to challenge, you want to think outside of these things that conserve the status quo.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, imagine for example, like if they were to make like a movie
Mhm.
about like, because you know, like there was like a movie 300, right, which was like literally like the Persian version of
Bruh.
feminism,
Ha ha
right?
ha. Yeah.
It was like the way
Yeah.
they portrayed us. And I was like, yo, imagine if they like, if like Hollywood made a movie where um that was like really well made, but from like the Persian point of view, and they're
Mhm.
fighting, and like, I don't know, like they're fighting off like the Greeks, right?
Uh-huh.
And like, would a movie like that ever be made? And like, probably not, because again, like, would white people go pay to see that movie? And two, like, it doesn't, like, people are comfortable, like the thing is, yo, like people are comfortable too with what they're fed. Like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of this like a lot of this like racist stuff, like people, like a lot of white people won't see that movie because that it contradicts what's been spoon fed to them their whole lives,
Absolutely.
that like the white,
Precisely.
right, that
Precisely.
Yeah.
yeah, that it's
Yeah.
been like the white
That's
man
not
who's
true.
been the beacon of democracy, and we're
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
white
Yeah.
people are the civil ones. And
Hey, that's a debate that my friends and I actually have out here a lot here in LA, where a lot of Iranian-Americans live, is the fact that they would never, ever make a movie about Cyrus the Great. And one of the reasons for that
Who's
is
gonna go see
because,
it?
well, besides who would go see it, it more or less goes against the what we've been spoon fed all these years, which is to say that, you know, that Persians are terrorists, Persians are evil. They don't contribute
Absolutely.
anything, productive to society. When really you're talking about Cyrus the Great, the guy that granted religious and freedom to many people of different
Yeah.
races. Now,
Yeah.
bringing that over to our current conversation, I personally believe a lot of that has a lot of why um, these conflicts with generals still exist is precisely because of that. It's because that they don't want to disturb the status quo,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact is they can, in order to continue holding these current or I want to say archaic beliefs in place.
I love that word.
Um, they they don't want to they continuously actually go out of their way to misinform people of what femininity and masculinity.
Yes.
When you think of, like we were talking about, beautiful and different but also the same, you're talking about just different. Femininity and masculinity have a lot to do with to do with the way that they're fined. And one thing that you find that a lot of males that are resistant to it is also has to do with how they were educated, what they were told.
Yeah.
They think that, say for example, a feminist is basically a woman that's basically becoming a man, running around trying to chop people's penises off and emasculate them, which makes them insecure and thereby even more resistant to the views of feminism, when in reality it's not so. It's just finding again those those equal levels of recognition of who we are as individuals. And
Yes.
and again, when you look at from the other side of the spectrum, like we were talking about before, if a man is not even, we won't even say, define them with slurs or gay or whatever. Let's just say a man's empathetic, shows a feminine trait. He's an empath. He shows more emotion towards people than, and cares more, and openly shows that he cares more about people than, say, another man who's internalized and, more
suppressing their entire feelings. Yeah.
Yes. That's also viewed as negative, which is
exactly.
not so. That's that if to me,
Excuse
I feel
me?
like men that do that are more masculine, number one, and more secure themselves because they know themselves to the point where they're able to feel like that in society without feeling like, oh, it makes me a man. And from the other side of the spectrum, when you do see a woman that's ambitious, you don't feel threatened by that as well. You actually think that's a beautiful thing. And to sound politically correct, just to say it, I actually find on my personal opinion that ambitious women are very attractive. I think it's an attractive trait, and you know, like, and we both benefit from that, because if we're both working together in a society where we're both putting equal input and output and communicating with each other on an equal level, I don't see how that's bad for anybody, instead of trying to put one person on a lower pedestal than the other. So I think what it comes down to when we're trying to bring about this change in the way people view femininity and masculinity and the people's views on feminism is basically re-educating them on what it is, what the basis and the ideal beliefs behind feminism really is, instead of the whole stereotypical thing where they're just men killers. They're gonna make you feel like less of a man. No, it's not
literally.
That. And that's
the problem with
that's
that is
the
fueled by social media.
Approach
also.
we gotta take.
Yeah. And I think Farnoosh opened up the conversation to where that was beautifully said, my man.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
I think he opened up the conversation to actually where we were all kind of wanting it to go. It was like, we've been talking about femininity, and this goes into masculinity, because
actually, Shaheen, before we get into that, real quick, I just want to respond to some things that were said.
Sure,
real
go
quick,
for it.
Just for some context, right? So
sure.
You guys were talking about 300, right? And how Persia is not seen in a positive light in the West, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the reason for that, and this is actually, I'm a history student. I,
love that.
Graduated. So part of that is that, one, all the sources we have after Cyrus the Great are written by the Greeks. So there's that.
Alexander the Great burned it all down.
Basically,
history is told by the eyes of the victor.
Right.
Exactly.
And the writings about Cyrus the Great from the Greeks, they actually loved him. It's actually hilarious if you go back and read the differences between how they viewed Xerxes and Darius versus Cyrus. It's hilariously different. But all those views are from the Greeks, and the Greeks are seen as the upholders of Western civilization.
Yes, they are.
Eastern invasion, kind of, right, in the ancient world. So those are the two narratives that cause that, right? And the other one I wanted to respond to was capitalism, because I fucking love capitalism. So
how are you?
I'm actually great. The reason I like capitalism, right, is because it engenders innovation. I just use engendered in a different way from gender, but that's fine. And under other systems, there's no incentive to make better stuff necessarily. Good enough just ends up being good enough a lot of times, and we can see that in classic examples. I mean, I don't want to bring the Soviet Union into this because it's a little different, but the thing there was the government said this is being made this certain way forever.
And that's it, yeah.
And that's it. And in capitalism, that can't really happen. So I would argue we're actually not capitalists in the United States. We are
interesting.
We are,
go on.
And we're actually technically corporate socialist, which basically means that the government works in contact with corporations to maintain their profit margins. And that's the government buying from those corporations, being supplied by them, and thus bailing them out when there's a massive recession. Things like this are because of that. And the Nordic countries are actually, they haven't been socialist technically since the 80s. They're actually more free market capitalists than we are. The way they're set up right now. They're more capitalist than we are. I don't care what conservatives have to say about that. They're literally more capitalist than us, because anyone can open a business for any reason. There's no corporate regulations stopping you from opening that business. You can basically pursue whatever you want in those countries, provided you have the ambition to do it. And there's nobody stopping you. Whereas in this country, you have a monopoly that can be oh no, you're not going to open that business because you're in competition with us. And we're going to hire these lawyers and this person from the government and make sure that you never open this business.
Yeah.
Completely different. But also, I mean, it's a little different because the Scandinavian countries, if you will, generally have better welfare systems than we do. Actually, well, much better. I can't say generally. But we also provide, and this is another problem, we provide the military for a lot of the world in the United States. We have bases all over the place, and other countries actually don't have their own militaries because we're there. right? So that's also part of the reason why our military budget's so ridiculous and we spend all this freaking money and we're not even at war half the time, like
Welcome to the
More-
US.
way more than
unless
half the
we
time.
make one. But Have
Have you seen the memes where it's like, why'd you shoot yourself? Have you seen those memes? It's like,
yes,
yeah.
But yeah, that's I just wanted to clear those little things
No,
up.
you know, I think like it's interesting that we were able to like just sit here and talk about that, because I think we actually all agree that like what you just said about like social corporatism, like that's it seems like oftentimes that like most people like on both sides, if you really just sit down and take away the labels that we throw on things like capitalism or corporatism and whatever, like if you actually just talk about the ideas and not the words, I think I think we all tend to actually believe like generally in the same thing. Because when Keith said I fucking love capitalism, he wasn't talking about the same system that we were just talking about a few minutes before. He was talking about like what capitalism, like for example, like if I were to make this phone and sell it to you, technically, like, is that what capitalism is? Like, is that
really good question? Some people like, argue there's different versions and different like
and in Canada, right? Like if you go to like Toronto or like anywhere in Canada, like you can create something and sell it, and like that's technically capitalism, and that's not bad. I think the problem is, again, it's like when what Keith talked about, it's like it's corporatism that's really the problem. And
it's governments in collusion with corporations creating systems that don't allow other people to basically make their own stuff or create new businesses, new products, things like that.
Like when you look at the incarceration rates of the US, right? Like a lot of people say it's capitalism. Well, you could say it's maybe like the better word for it would just be corporatism, where like there's, you know, a jail should not be a private company.
It has profit. There is profit in
creating a demand
jails.
for prisoners is not a good way to run a society. So I think like a lot of liberals or like people on the left who critique capitalism, I get what they're saying. Maybe the problem is it's like the words we're throwing around. Like sometimes like we like to say things that'll get the most retweets on Twitter. So well, you know, like capitalism, you know, doing this, and I mean technically I see what they're saying, but I think the more correct word would just be like corporatism. Because even, you know, like me, Farnoosh and JamineA, we're all musicians, we're all independent, trying to like make you know, but and in a way we're the true capitalists, right? We're actually trying to break free from these record labels trying to sign us and then exploiting our music, aka labor. It's like, I think like what socialism is basically like taking away from the corporate power, and you know, we own the means of our production, which is like the correct form of capitalism, maybe, right?
I like where you're going with that. I think my only problem with like classically defined neoliberalism rather would be just the fact that there is no threshold on companies' budgets. I think I agree with innovation. I do agree that if you have competition to a certain extent, better products are going to be made. And I think that, great, we should not be stuck on one thing and go for that. And I think we brought up the Scandinavian countries and the Nordic countries because they're doing something right? They have a welfare system. They have like a social structure that is created to benefit society. The jails are rehabilitation centers. You go in as a criminal, you come out with a new skill, ready to be part of the society. You have a drug problem, you go into rehab, you come back clean and with possibilities to be a better, again, aspect of society. And the way that, and I think that words are very important, and you are more knowledgeable in the subject of how do we define what's happening in the US right now. But like this structure of just creating more, it does lead to a point of you just can't create anymore, because that incentive to just always be creating more and more is one of the reasons why that the globe is going into, it's deteriorating, and there is literally no more space. There is so much trash because rather consumerism, and this need to produce, to consume, to produce, to consume, to contain the system. The system is falling, and I'm not going to use the word capitalism because it's quite broad. It's too broad about what's happening in the US and what's happening in the rest of the world. And just like how I argue that what we have seen from socialism and what we have seen from communism isn't necessarily what the ideology wanted it to be, I think that could also be said about capitalism, as in what capitalism truly, the ideology of wanting to create better things and having innovation, and what we're actually seeing it being used firsthand are two different things. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think like Andrew Yang like talked about like technology is increasing, like the levels of technology that's being put out there, and they're advancing at a very, 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 very fast rate. And again, like partially due to our whatever economic system we have here. And eventually, and like, yes, like there are great things that come with that, obviously.
Yeah.
But there are also not great things that come with that, and things that are detrimental, actually. Like, let's take a look at social media. And what, I mean, yes, that has done great things. I mean, technically, we're all using social media right now. Like, and this is going to be uploaded on Spotify, and then we're going to be using like Instagram and all these different social media tools to promote this conversation. True, but you know, like,
but we go and talk mad shit at the same time about it.
Yeah, yeah, because we are. Yeah, but at the same, you know, like human nature, you know, like we have, you know, we're flawed. You know, we often think that we're perfect humans. We come with so many flaws, and you know, like there have been increased levels of depression among the youth in this country.
Yeah, so much.
Suicide rates are going up. More people are showing up in the hospitals because they're physically cutting themselves, right? And studies have shown that the super high rates of social media, you know, like this, you know, like what the high usage of social media use is contributing to that.
Yeah.
And now, you know, and now again, like now there's like these algorithms in place because of our economic system. Keep in mind that like these apps, they function in a way where they want you to stay on the app as long as possible. So they have algorithms that study your patterns and your behavior. So they keep you on the app, and they throw you in with ads, because the more you're on the app, the more ads you're going to like come across. And what this does is it creates like an echo chamber. Well, because it sees what you like. Like me, I like, you know, we're like progressive people per se, right? Whatever. And we're gonna see a lot of views that reinforce our beliefs. And then on the other side of the coin, with the Trump world, you have people believing in like conspiracy theories and QAnon shit. And like, the liberals are like actually like pedophiles who are trying to like, you know, like drink the blood of children and blah, blah, blah.
They're
and Trump
they're in league with the reptilians. Yeah.
They're in league with the reptilian lords, and Trump is chosen by Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior.
He is the coming of Christ.
Yeah. I actually saw a post the other day of somebody, they listed all of Trump's accomplishments, and then at the end it said, "Praise be his name," like people normally do for Jesus. I was like,
oh my God.
Really?
But
really,
that's well, one, like those people are fucking weird. One,
right? No, they are. But and the thing is, like, I see more of that stuff probably because like I'm a libertarian, so like I'm kind of in between. So I get shit from both. I get stuff from both sides in my algorithm, and like I see some strange things. Some strange things.
Yeah, the darkest corners of the webs. You see all of that. Yeah. And I think like, but like eventually like, what this will do to our society is like terrible, because now it's increasing divisions. We live in two separate realities. I would honestly say that the four of us like all live in like probably the same reality, but but you know, like there's some people argue. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I was just gonna say like, some people say you need to have conversations with people you disagree with. I would argue that, you know, like me and Keith, like we disagree on some things, but because we live in the same reality, you know, like we can have a conversation about it and not get mad. It's not even a debate.
Yeah.
We're just discussing. This is a discussion where if you talk to someone who's like completely on the other side, who believes that the Black Illuminati is using affirmative action to put the white man down.
Literally. Though.
How do you argue with that? You know what I'm saying? You cannot.
You can't argue with you.
Like, yeah.
You fucking can't. You can't. And like, I literally, oh my God. One time, here's a story time. I was working at a media company at my, not a company, it was a society at my university in the UK, and I had this guy who wanted to go cover the protests that were happening, and he was like anti-conservative party, obviously, in the UK. And then also it was just very interesting. It was, you know, there were environmentalist movements, there were anti-Tory movements, and the North is quite, you know, labor, so they're more, you know, left. Because they're the working class usually, they have been historically, so they tend to identify more with the Labour Party. Anyways, there were protests happening, and this guy, there's this white man, he's there existing, and he literally, he's like, yeah, I'm in political society. Now, I don't want to say that I know everything. I don't. I literally do not know everything. And I say that because I have taken the time to get educated on the topics, literally earned 2 degrees on the topics. And I'm still like, my knowledge is limited and is mostly based on my experience and my opinion. And so what I think, please go research for yourself, because it's not all whole truth. It is my truth. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I mean, there's a joke around in like my class, like, I wish I had the confidence of a white man, like a cis white. I wish I had because they go ahead and they say things and they're just like, it is the fact, it is the truth. That's it. I have found the ingredient that's going to like fix all of our social issues. So he's like, yeah, I'm in a politics society. I just think we all just need to talk more, man. I just think we all just need to have more conversation. Like, that's the issue. We don't speak to each other.
It sounds nice on
it
people.
does, right?
Yeah.
I was like, yes, sir. Like, yes. Okay. Anyways, we go on these protests. We're like filming them. We're trying to see. I'm trying to figure him out. Like, you know, where do you sit on? What are your thoughts? And in the end of the day, as we're like conversating, and like nothing got, you know, we disclaimer, we had 2 different worlds. No one was shouting and there was nothing uncivil about what we were talking about. We were just talking about, can you have particular conversations? If someone is like all the way over there, it's not my responsibility to like necessarily educate them or convince them, or I can just express to them my truth and they can express to me their truth. But at a certain point, conversation will not work. That's a very naive and optimistic viewpoint. At a certain point, there are power differentiations, and so you could have a conversation, but if you're having conversation with your boss, you are not on the same level. If you're having conversation with someone that is systematically like benefiting from everything in society, and he's saying, I'm the oppressed one, disclaimer, at the end of the conversation, he goes on to stating that women are being forced to be in scientific fields. They're naturally more inclined to be in the home and cook and be more nurturing. And Africans have a lower IQ.
Okay, maybe you want to say that, but yeah.
He literally was like, you know, IQ, you know, like the IQs, and
he said Black people have a lower IQ.
He was like, statistically, Black people, you know, have like lower IQs. I'm like, where are you getting your statistics from, my guy?
Right.
And
Stormfront.com.
Oh my God. And he's out here like, you know, I just feel discriminated against. I don't think privilege exists. His words, I don't think privilege exists. He was a denier of privilege. And he was like, I think I'm actually being discriminated against as a white man. Like, all these women coming into the field, they don't even belong here. They don't even want to do it. They don't want to do it. They're being forced to do it. And affirmative action, what is that? You know, I just think if you're smarter, you should get the job, and like statistically smarter. And I'm like, hello? Do you hear yourself, sir? And
the problem with like, with the exception of that, like like studies have shown, like when that person said they've shown that like black people have lower IQ. First of all, there are no studies that say such, one, but two,
racist scientists do. Racist scientists do. Yes, there are pseudoscientists that are like, yes,
that's pseudo meta science, right?
Hello.
Yeah, if they're
The
looking
thing
at
is,
studies
like-
from like 1910 with eugenics, then yes, those you can find those, right? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure those were his sources, like a modern version of like them.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, like, the thing with conversations is, actually, like, thinking about it, I think they could work, but they have to be very, 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 very long, like, very long, and you have to have like an unnatural amount of patience, because
And empathy.
Yeah.
and empathy.
Yeah, because I like growing up in South Windsor, Connecticut, which is, like a white suburb in, in white ass Kentucky Fried Connecticut.
Oh my God.
It's like a lot of my best friends were conservative, and there was a time when like we just disagreed. Like I remember there was a time when like 2012, when like these dudes would just be like, oh yeah, Mitt Romney, and I'd be like, oh yeah, Obama, but it never really deterred our friendship until it got to Trump. And I always I never agreed with them on their views, but to up until a certain point, I always empathized, where I'm like, well, what causes people to think this way? But
Because you're a good human being, and you face discrimination, so you want to feel why they're feeling this. This is a product. Sorry, but like because you've experienced it, and you've been forced to question why. You've been forced to question why. They have never been forced to question anything.
Like I had a friend, his name was Rob, and he was
Rob.
Yeah,
Love Rob.
Just yeah. See, you already know the stories are gonna be weird when you're like, I have a friend named Rob, right? Like, this is like a dude who I'm not gonna sit here and insult his family, but you grow up in like in certain conditions where like you're surrounded. You never see, like, if you never see like a person of color in your life, you're not really generally exposed to them, unless like maybe you go to the grocery store and you see one black person in line, and if that's like all you see, and then like you go home, your dad is watching Fox News, or let's say he's driving you to school and Rush Limbaugh's on the radio, and when you come home from school, you're majority white school, and then you see like the American flag, right? Or like your dad might have a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, or like I can see like that's the reality that he grew up in.
Absolutely.
In a way, like he was like, and then like our school system brainwashes you too. Like like I remember like in elementary school, you have to like stand up, do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they have this whole romanticized version of the American of American history. You were like, like they kind of gloss over slavery, where it's like, oh yeah, it happened, then the Civil War,
until
it was over,
basically.
Yeah. And like when you grow up thinking that, like exposed to that, like that's why I always, to an extent, sympathized with them, because I saw them as unfortunate products of a system. And same with like I see like a lot of liberals like on Twitter, they'll be like, yeah, fuck the US military, fuck these soldiers. And I'm like, well, again, I don't like what they do. I don't like the US military, but the people who actually join the military, in their minds, they actually think they're heroes.
Absolutely. Yes.
They don't think that they're going out there killing people for oil. They think, like, they've been told that they're going there to defend me. They think they're defending me and you. So that's why, like, I don't. I'm not gonna see a troop and like throw tomatoes at them. I'm not gonna go on Twitter and say, "Oh, fuck them. I hope they get shot in Iraq." Like, I'm not. I do see some people on our side of the political aisle like saying dumb shit on Twitter, and like I think like that's the stuff like we got to be careful about, because again, they are products. they are
They
unfortunate.
are
Like,
groomed just like we are groomed. Just like women are groomed to think that they need to behave in a certain way and that this is acceptable. They are groomed to think that this is the
yeah,
reality that they lived in. And they're pawns. And everyone's a pawn in their own reality with their own structures that have contained them. Except the one thing I would say about these soldiers, yes, a lot. This is really good. Like, this is what gets me really fucked up, right? In the US, if you have been down on your luck, if have or if you want to, but like I knew a lot of people that went into the military because they couldn't get into school or they weren't ready to go to school, so they go to the military. Now, and then after that, they have options again, because why? You're literally saving your life, like at the expense of children in the Middle East. You are fixing your life and your social welfare.
they don't see it like that.
They don't see. Of course, they don't see that. No. I don't think anybody that goes into a war thinks that they're on the wrong side, or
No.
not just war. Anything. Everybody, the villains in the TV shows that we see, and in reality, they don't think that they're the villains. They think that they're liberators. They think that they're really fixing a problem. They think that they are really living in the best country in the world. They genuinely do think it. And the difference, however, and within the military, a lot of people of color and a lot of women and a lot of marginalized communities also get exploited. It's an exploitative system for them as well. How, in the same way that the patriarchy is also exploitative for men that are functioning within it, it is exploitative in overall. However, within the power disparities, one group has the power to self-educate and actually make a difference, actually stop. One group, if you have the power and you continue to close your eyes and blindly continue the system that benefits you, yes, you are a pawn. And I find it personally, you have to step up. You have to step up, because you have more means than me. Because if I go ahead and I speak to that guy, let's say, who was having these opinions, I am just that radical feminist that burns her bras, that doesn't know what she's talking about. She thinks she's disadvantaged and she thinks she's like unprivileged because of her color. My words are not seen when I'm speaking to that man. I'm seen as literally everything he's been told not to listen to and to devalue. However, if another white man was saying everything I was saying to that guy, oh my God, his response would be different. And that's the responsibility on people in power, on people that in this society are benefiting from it too. While they are experiencing things that work against them,
So
they are still holding the power. You know what I'm saying? They still are privileged.
People who like kind of like me or Keith, who are like, let's say like we have some level of privilege as males or light-skinned males, or you're saying that it's kind of like our responsibility to like go into that other side and try to have that conversation. Is that what you're saying?
When you have more power, if you genuinely want to make a change, you can have the means to educate yourself and make a change if you want to. Nobody has to do anything. However, unfortunately, when things are heard from a white man, they're listened to more. While we live in this world, that's the reality of what we're living in. Doesn't mean that it's okay or right, but it tends to be. So the person on the other side that feels threatened by what I'm saying, if he hears it from you, he's going to be threatened less.
I agree with you to a certain degree, because I bring it down to even the most basic level. How many times have you ever had a discussion as a youth with your parents, and you completely block out everything they say because you already have it in their mind that they're the aggressor, that they're the enemy, then they're not going to, and you automatically block out what they say. But then you have the same discussion, say, with your peer, like you and I, and all of a sudden you become receptive to what they're saying because you feel like that's somebody on an equal level as you for whatever reason. Whether that's necessarily true or you're not, based on whatever it is, it's the same principle. Once you're, unfortunately, I have experienced that myself, when somebody that is on the opposing, let's just say opposing viewpoint, has an opposing viewpoint as you, is having that discussion, a discussion with you, naturally I mean, you instinctively, I wouldn't say naturally, instinctively, even if you're a little open mind, you still go in a little bit subconsciously thinking you're going to be on the defensive. Whereas somebody that you see as an equal is speaking to you, or somebody that at least you highly respect their words or their viewpoints is speaking to you about the same exact thing, your approach subconsciously seems to be more open-minded. Your approach doesn't come in with your guard up. You're now sitting there being more receptive to being what's said. And I think that's what you're saying here is basically that we tend to be more those people that know that they're in that position. It's not they don't have to do anything, but if morally, if you feel a certain way, it would be best to be open about it and to speak up about it rather to be reserved and keep quiet.
Yeah, that you have an upper hand of power, respect. You know, that person's not looking down at you, whoever your opponent is, right? Or whoever you're speaking to. Systematically, because, you know, you were talking about your neighbors and the people that grew up with this mentality. Yes, they are definitely being pawned, and they're definitely, but bala boro payin boro, go up or go down, they still hold on to more power. And yes, they're still being used in the system as well, but less so. So I feel empathy for them, but not as much as I feel empathy for other people that are having more struggles, that are going through more things. Like they really could take the time to snap out of it. They really are less toggled down by systematic inequalities. They have their shit, they do. None of this means that they don't have shit. They have shit, except their skin color isn't one of them. And their gender identity isn't one of them. And their class isn't one of them. And as you start having different classifications of your identity, you have different privilege. I have privileges. Everybody here has certain privileges over another person in society. I have responsibility to speak about matters that I am privileged over. So just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I'm like, oh my God, suppressing everything that I've ever been. No. I have also experienced lots of privilege. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to use my voice if I want to use my voice? Because I can see my privilege and I can see the things that I've been disadvantaged into. And they should too. The people that are just sitting and not thinking critically because the system is benefiting them.
But that's because you already see it. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think, and like, for like, I think of like those people that, you know, like, let's say like those troops, again, like, I think if they even started to sort of critically, you know what I'm saying? I feel like they would immediately like, stop. You know what I mean? Like they would stop.
It doesn't mean you're inherently a bad person at all. You're a person.
I've seen that happen myself. I have friends that have come out of the military, right? They went in for the same reasons that you had addressed earlier. Say they needed to go to school, or they needed the money, or whatever. Then they saw what they saw. There are troops that get out of the military, snap out of it, and they'll tell you as soon as they get out of the military, oh, you know, we did a bunch of terrible shit. What's going on is completely wrong out there. Yeah. They do speak up about it. And, you know, unfortunately, some of them deal with the consequences of that because that's not something that they're encouraged to do, which is why a lot of them don't speak up of it. You know, when you're the military, you're an army of one. You're not encouraged to think critically. So for you to break out of that, even when you're not an active member of the military, it's still frowned upon by your fraternity and your community, which is the military where you do come from. So, yeah, I mean, there are people in the military that still speak up about it, but there are a lot of people that see it. They do wake up mentally, but verbally they're not expressing it. I think those are the certain individuals that I think that we're talking about here.
I think so. I think a little bit, but also I will give them, I don't know. I'm empathetic too. Like I don't want to be like just hating on everybody. I just think that if you have the means, educate yourself. If you have the means, educate yourself. Don't just be complicit in your luxury, because it's luxury to have a certain in this country and in a lot of the world, to have a certain skin color, to have a certain gender identity, to have a certain lifestyle, it is like gold. You're living in luxury. So yes, think about why you have that luxury, where you got it from, where is it coming from, why don't other people have it? Think critically, because you have to think critically. And for the people that do, bless their hearts, good. Start working on it. And I also know that a lot of people, like a lot of white people that want to be allies, don't know where to start. And I think that a lot of movements from the left tend to be really hostile, and they don't allow like proper discourse, because at a certain point there are people that want to figure out what's going on, but then they're like shunned, and that's not cool either. Like,
yeah, that's the shit I see on Twitter.
yeah,
and I think like discussion, it goes back to I think what we were talking about before we even started recording this podcast. But like when it comes to online first of all, when you go on like Twitter or when you go on Instagram, whatever it is, especially Twitter, I think Twitter is a toxic wasteland of dumb opinions. But I think people are like, no thinking person like comes home from work or whatever is like, I feel like stimulating my mind and having a conversation. Let me go on Twitter, right? Like no one does. Like, so like when people go on Twitter, like to me, if they do it just to, I don't know, like it's maybe to like make themselves feel better. Like I feel like progressives, especially on social media, tear each other down more than conservatives do. Like I feel like with the conservative side, like, look, if you're sucking Trump's dick, I don't care how much you're sucking it, you're on the right side, right? It doesn't matter.
You're sucking it, licking it, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Anything you contribute to making America great again, right? Like that's how their base is. On our base, it's like, I'm pretty sure like this 1 hour and a half conversation that we've had would probably get all 4 of us canceled within our own like.
You're never gonna be progressive enough, Shaheen. I'm just gonna let you know right now.
I was telling Jasminea before we recorded this podcast that there are people, Iranians, some Iranians think that I'm a paid bot of the mullahs of Iran, and then there are some who think I'm being paid by the Israelis and the Saudis. You know what I'm saying? And that I'm somehow like Islamophobic because I don't think in religious fundamentalism and I'm like a bigot. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I get shit from both sides, and it's absolutely nuts. And
hold on to your truth. Hold on to your truth.
Like Jesse, I think you're familiar with because you shared something of hers on your Instagram story. I think her name's like Hoda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I have like this guy on Twitter who like quote tweeted something that she says like, oh, it's so obvious that she supports the regime because blah blah blah, and I just like responded and I'm like, well, because like I think she said something about Naveed Afkari and she said it's obvious that American politicians are going to exploit this situation.
Of course they're gonna exploit the situation.
Yeah.
Hello, that's not even.
And then like this kid that made the quote, he was upset that he brought the attention from Iran to the American government. And I'm like, look, just because you're pointing fingers at the US as you should and say, well, and calling them out for their own shit doesn't mean you're not calling out the regime either. And I think that's the biggest issue we have in our. Yeah,
say it louder. The bots didn't hear you. Say it louder.
I said that on Twitter, and like some people who used to support me in my music was like, "Why are you always supporting this regime apologist?" I'm like, "What?" And she immediately I just said, "Look, I don't think I haven't found direct evidence that links her to the regime." She like quote tweeted me and she was like, LOL, joke of the day. And it got like a bunch of like reactions. Oh, like. And I was canceled by this one girl. And I'm like, well, okay. This is like the issue where, yeah. She immediately like unfollowed me on Twitter, Instagram, unfriended me on Facebook.
But you're defending her. You were saying that it's not.
No, I was defending Hoda, not the girl.
Aha, you were
not,
defending Hoda. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, like I don't know. Now, is she a regime apologist? I haven't really seen I don't know, like I don't know. I don't think she is, but I don't know. There are people who think that anyone who attacks like American policy on Iran is a regime apologist.
Bro.
Everything needs
This
to be
is the
binary.
issue.
Everything
Say that
needs to be
again?
binary.
Mm-hmm.
You have to either be this side or that side, 100%. And if you're anywhere in the area, then everyone wants to say "fuck you" because
As the diaspora, we're literally like as the diaspora, we are the we're paradoxes. We're literal living paradoxes because we can't take 100% one side or the other.
Right.
I mean, if we really think, can we really take one side completely over the other?
Right.
Yes, words are very powerful, and sometimes, well, from personal experience, I can tell you that my words are very calculated in terms of what I choose to say, especially on shows like this, because of the responsibility I have towards my co-host and my guests. As Shaheen knows, I have, outside of here, I have a very, very, if a little filter, if at all. It's already gotten me in trouble with a whole regime, and it's gotten me banned. So I'm very careful with what I say. So in terms of my responsibility to others, but just know that I am very well aware of in terms of, you know, how certain sides and how certain people can approach you, and how if you somehow fit on a middle ground somewhere, they'll either accuse you of being one thing or another, or even goes deeper than to people trying to recruit you for causes that you have nothing to do with. They want to ally you with a certain agenda that they have that you don't really believe in at all, but they think because you said one thing that works to their favor, that that works. I mean, just to give you one example without going into the deep story, because again, I try to keep this off of things like this podcast. But as far as one of the reasons I got into the trouble that I did is I made a song and it got posted on a certain campaign page, and I didn't choose for it to be posted on that page. It was just that I was speaking a message around, it was regarding the 2009 protests after
Green
the
movement,
Green Movement. I was heavily involved in that. I had made a song, and I did this for people, like to spread awareness to everyone. But because it's certain fit in there, it served to fit a certain narrative for a group. They used it. Now I'm banned.
You over.
Yes.
Fuck.
So I will leave it at that.
Was that legal? They need to get your permission before they can utilize your song.
That's
they didn't.
Yeah, if it was the people of the U.S. that were using it, sure.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
There's
no copyright law over there.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I don't regret it. I would have done it again. We got to speak up. We got to speak up. I had a discussion with someone else the other day. Martin Luther King may not have lived to see a lot of the fruits of what he put forth for his dream, but he still, I bet you if you could talk to him for less than an hour today and bring back his spirit, he would say he wouldn't regret a damn thing. And I don't regret a damn thing. I'm just saying I can relate to the fact that, and I would do it again, but I can relate to the fact in terms of people fitting you in certain narratives just based on, or people choosing to label you as something just because.
Exactly. And it takes a certain amount of critical thinking to realize the nuances in the middle of that a person can be pro this, anti this, while also being anti this, pro this.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, I don't know if that just goes down to our tribalistic nature as human beings, because like we're thinking critically. In order to do that, you have to kind of try your best to take your emotions out of it. I think if you like, it's so easy. Like I get like what those people who try to put us in a box do. Like it's so easy to just let that shit consume you. You know, like I have so many people, I don't know, like they like come at me, and at the end of the day, like I just acknowledge now, you know what, like you're thinking through emotion, I'm not, so I win. But guys, I think this conversation was great. I think we are like almost at 2 hours, and
no
we
filler though. It was probably worth it. No filler.
No, it was awesome. I loved it. Honestly, man, like I'm the kind of guy who would rather like sit with a few people and like have conversations like this over like
kind of what?
What did I say? A few guys. Oh, cancel.
You went, I'm the kind of guy.
Oh, really? No. I know. I said
I'm the kind of guy. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. No, I said I'm the
now.
type of. Yeah, there you go. I'm the type of person who would much rather just like sit and have a conversation like this than like to go to a club. That's just me. But I think we're gonna leave it at this because we started talking about feminism and it kind of just went towards capitalism and racism and dumb people. So
all forms of discrimination.
Yes. So
as a man who's a quarter black, I can tell you the Black Illuminati are not coming for you right now.
Good to know.
Not yet, man.
Disclaimer.
Not yet. Yeah. So JamineA, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we got to have this conversation. Yeah, I hope I didn't اصطلاحات فارسی هستش مغزتون رو نخورده باشم. چی میگن؟ Eat your brains out.
Not at all. Thank you for being our inaugural guest. You always historically hold a place in the show.
Say that again.
You will historically always hold a place in the show, no matter where it goes.
That's true. You are the first. Right. You are the first female guest of
first guest. Period.
Shahs and Kings.
Thank you. Thank Shahs, Kings, and Shahs. Malake.
And Queen.
The Queen. How do you say Queen in Farsi? Malake, or is it like Shah? No. Shahzadeh. No, that sounds like. That's like Shahzadeh. Okay.
Shahzadeh, I think it's a kid.
It's a kid.
Shahzadeh, yeah.
Right, yeah. I was like, yeah, you know, how Malaki Khube Salam. Hi, how are you? Hi, Shah. Hi.
Shah's Kings. Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Awesome. So, all right, guys. So, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Peace out.